Thank you much. Thank you guys for coming today. Time is precious. My expectation is to be done in somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on the Q&A and the directions I end up going with the slides. It's called Kindergarten through PhD. Simply put, I find myself spending a lot of time educating people with regards to what is modern security, what are the problems, what's it look like. So I thought I'd start with some real basic stuff and hold everybody's hand through it. I don't want to use a bunch of slides that contain words because those are lost. So what I'm going to do is use a lot of slides that contain pictures that everybody will connect with. I'm going to assume you don't know much about IT to start with, but I am going to hold your hand through on how you can break in and steal things from people and then take that and stretch it to become parts of IT. It has listed Q&A at the end. Truth be told, you can interrupt me. It's probably better for everybody if you interrupt me because you might not be the only one with the question. So that said, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's an old logo for Walmart. But today we're going to talk about how to break in and steal something from Walmart en masse and get away with it, and get away with it many, many times. In fact, probably somebody will do something like this today. And we're going to take that, how to steal from Walmart, and we're going to extrapolate it and show you guys how it's being done in the IT world today. So every picture you see up here is a real picture that Miss Jessica took with her iPhone in order to make some collateral for this video. So no actors in this slide. Those are real people shopping at Walmart. It doesn't matter if it's fruits or vegetables that they're buying, or electronic goods or clothing or anything in between. So let's talk a little bit about how it works getting in and out of Walmart. When I walk into a Walmart store, I have basically two things that I can do as far as Walmart management goes. The one thing I can do is I can travel the shelves and just look at inventory, meaning I can leave the store with nothing in my cart other than the kids I came in with. Or as another alternative, I can pick up something from inventory and remove it, meaning I can put it in my cart and take it out of the store. So if you're a business, the options are I can either buy a car or not buy a car, or I can purchase a service or not purchase a service. Those are kind of the only two choices available to me at Walmart. And Walmart has made it a science. They can log and tell you exactly how many peanut butter light bulbs, whatever the heck that is, are there, as well as how many bags of Doritos are on the shelf almost at any given instant. So now there's a truth here that I haven't touched yet, but the truth is I can walk into a Walmart and I can destroy their inventory, right? That kind of thing really does happen. Kids go down the halls and they mess things up, but we're not going to take that into account. We're just going to look for situations that include me doing things like taking Doritos and buying them from the store. So how do I break their system and steal everything, and then how do I compare that to IT? Well, first of all, keep in mind Walmart has spent a lot of money to create charts and graphs and hire third parties to give them an accountability of what's getting spent and where and how much, because they take care of their inventory extremely seriously. That's their business. They're publicly traded. They have an IT department of 1,200 people. So it's a huge, huge part of their company. And they have maps that are in real time that they can look at to see what's going on within their stores. Concentrations of people can be color-coded as well. Are there more people? And more people are standing in regions that are red. Very few people are standing in regions that are purple. People at places that are yellow have a medium concentration of people. So they have logging mechanisms all over the place. But if I'm a Walmart employee, which is something different than being a Walmart customer, in addition to being able to take things off the shelf, I have this unique ability to add inventory. You guys with me? So instead of buy or do nothing at all, which is what a Walmart employee can do, he also gets the freedom to go through the doors in the back there and pull out inventory and add it to the shelves. He might take the form of an employee. He might take the form of a contractor, like this fella here, or he might be a person who's multitasking, namely someone who's got the ability to assist customers concurrent at the same time they're restocking items in inventory, right? And what gives them the permission to do that sort of behavior is a combination of the coat that they're wearing and their ID badge, right? If you have the ID badge and the coat, and you start putting things on the shelf, people will not challenge what you're doing at all. This person in this photo has a little scanning device wrapped around their right arm that they're carrying as well. And Walmart has mechanisms in place to use all these different people with the same sorts of ID badges to make sure that their inventory gets managed correctly. And you follow the same that's in each of these screens. It's badges, it's coats, it's appearance, whatever you want to call it. When I leave Walmart, right, when I want to walk out the door, if I don't follow their protocols, there's somebody there to watch me and catch me and arrest me. And they're trained to do just that, put their hands behind their bodies and stare at the doorways to make sure people aren't taking things out illegally. But Walmart's expectation is when you leave that store, you're going to go through a procedure that they do not tell you about when you enter the store because they just assume you're going to follow it, right? You're going to go to the checkout line because if you don't, you might end up in prison. We've all seen stories and low-quality television shows that deal with people trying to take things from inventory without having appropriate permission. And Walmart does have some back-end technology in place. There are cameras hanging around to try to track activity. But again, in general, this activity, these cameras, are all stationed around locations like the one where this woman is right now because that's where the theft is occurring. They don't think the theft is occurring when you take it off the shelf. The theft occurs when you're taking out the door. And in many instances, they have cameras scattered in areas that they consider to be strategic so that they have a footprint all about you in the doors. And the expectation is for you, Mr. Walmart customer, when you walk into the store and you walk out of the store, you're always using the same sequence of doors, right? So you always are coming in and out of the same place. So this is the starting point that a bad guy looks at when he's wanting to make an attack and do something in a Walmart that involves stealing everything. Now let's take a step back. Remember the people that had the blue coats on and the employee badges? They didn't necessarily have the same rules that a customer had. Walmart employees also get one of these, don't they? And if you look at for the location that the Walmart employees use, it's often in a place that looks something like this. And in addition to having that sort of appearance to it, it also is a multi-purpose area. There's trucks that pull up in there, and those trucks unload and load inventory in and out of the store. These aren't places, the last three slides, they're not places that you and I as a consumer ever get to see or ever get to mess with, because in order to use any of those places, you got to have one of these. Right? Now, if you bypass those back doors and you decide to be a Walmart worker and walk through the front door just like everybody else does, you're penalized for that, aren't you? And how are you penalized? Because you skipped this step. And if you don't clock in when it comes time to go to work, you don't get paid. So this sort of an experience with a Walmart employee walking through the front door, it doesn't happen very often. They want to use the doors that are going to maximize the value to them as an employee, no different than you and I would do. So anyways, back to our employee. When he gets his badge on and his blue robe on, he has the ability to walk into an aisle and begin altering your experience, no questions asked. In this case, he's changing pricing on an item. And this other one, the fella is a third-party employee. You can see he's got a brand on his shirt that is not a Walmart brand. It's a third party. He probably works for the vendor that supplies that dish detergent or that laundry detergent and is stacking on the shelf as part of his job description. He may or may not, or she may or may not, have access to a barcode scanning device. And that scanning device is going to allow them to regulate inventory that comes and goes in real time so the people back in IT can monitor all this stuff for people. And I know this may seem kind of drawn out. Why am I talking about Walmart for 10 minutes? It's because this Walmart story is going to connect into the IT story that affects insurance and manufacturing and education and construction. You'll eventually see the connection. And there's this doorway that the Walmart employee has in the store that the customers don't walk through, and that gets him into the back of the store. In that back of the store area, there's typically a thing like a break room, alternative emergency exits that aren't usable by customers, and a lot of times there's kiosks for people who work in, say, human resources department, and everything else happen to work. And lastly, there is an IT room. That's where phone systems and circuits and networking equipment is all plugged in. In general, these rooms are places no one ever wants to go into. They don't have windows, but they typically have a door you can just walk into and grab access to what you need. Some of them will have a more fancy security type facility monitoring in real time what's going on in different locations. But as you can see from this screen, it's got a U.S. sort of footprint. The guy on the screens right now is staring at the whole United States at once. So he may not be very helpful to anybody who's trying to break in real time in one specific store. He might be able to tell somebody it's going on, but he's not going to be able to do anything to stop it. Okay, so I'm done with that. That's 11 minutes, and we've just taken the time to take a stare at what's going on inside of a Walmart to a certain extent. And what we want to do is we want to start doing a little bit of comparisons and share with you guys how something like this might occur. So let's say I want to break into a Walmart, and my day job at Walmart isn't to break in and go in when the store is closed. I want to break in when the store is open, and there's tons of people and tons of employees in all directions. Now, why am I saying that? Because most security breaches in the IT world occur 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, for the same reasons. It's very easy to do something unnoticed when there's already a lot of activity going on. And in my case, let's say I'm going to target stealing some things from the high-tech area. In my case, I want to target a bunch of televisions. My objective is going to be to try to grab 5 or 10 televisions and get them out the store without there being any questions asked somewhere in the middle of the workday. So that's my objective. Now, here's how I would do that, and this is how I would do the security breach. Obviously, there's some scoping out me and a few other friends need to do. I don't want to do a break-in if there's going to be a chance I might get hurt or I might be the only one that gets busted. So typically, just like in the IT world, there's a multiplicity of people involved. And if you go back to the earlier slides, the one thing that I had in common every time I was trying to mention an employee and the choices they all had some sort of ID badge, right? Something that they would use to clock in, clock out, something that identified them. And in many instances, Walmart's decided that that's inadequate and they want their employees to actually wear one of these as well. Who would have ever guessed that you could go on to Etsy and buy a Walmart customer service vest? Granted, it's expensive, but you could buy one of those and you could begin to take on the role a little bit of a Walmart employee. You can believe that. So anyways, put all those things together, and let's talk through how I'm going to try to make my my breach occur. Hold on a second. This fella here in the picture here, he's not an employee, but he kind of looks like an employee, doesn't he? He's got the vest on. He's walking in areas of the building wearing clothing that makes him look like everybody else. And if he was a wise person, he took some sort of badge, which he either bought or stole or found on the ground somewhere. He got some sort of badge to get himself in through one of these back doors. His intention when he was trying to get in through one of the back doors was to make it so that the systems in place to monitor everything didn't catch his crime. They wanted to find a way to do that. And what's one of the best ways to do that? Well, if you can see right here, the store right here is running on some sort of emergency power and lighting, and it's late at night. So his objective is going to be something like this. He's going to take his blue coat off, he's going to take his badge off, and he's going to set it down on a cart somewheres in the section where he wants to do all the theft from. So if I go to a little picture here from a screen where something was actually taken, he'd take his vest and he'd take his badge and he'd just set it on the cart and then walk out of the building and as he's walking out of the building through his back door that he came in on, he would make a little phone call to a friend of his walking around the store, and he'd say, you can go put on that vest right now. I'm going to go back through and kill the power into the IT room. Because everybody who knows anything about servers and technology knows it's not an act of science to figure out how to get into the room that contains the routers and the switches and the servers. Somebody's got a key, or you could put some duct tape on it, or you could leave it open. It's not hard to get in there, and you can just undo the plug. And the odds are, if you're smart enough to know how to unplug a piece of IT equipment, the odds are you're highly likely to know how to go into the back and unplug a generator, or at the very least take a drill and drain all the diesel fuel so it doesn't turn on automatically. And again, this has been done before. So what will happen is the man will put the vest on, he'll put the badge on, he'll take all the TVs and put them on his pallet and just push them right out the door. Because anytime a Walmart employee goes in or out of a door, it's assumed that because they're an employee, that whatever they have is not going to be subject to the same scrutiny, especially if there's some sort of power outage. So the outside of the building is very busy. There's people coming and going all the time. It would be a matter-of-factual event for me to just take everything on a cart out and load it up on some truck. That I'm not an employee and I'm masquerading as one may be a little bit illegal, or it is very illegal. But the odds are I'm going to be able to get away with that. You know, Walmart security would get involved with the whole process, and perhaps a week later, when they're doing inventory after the power's been restored, they'll discover that they're missing a few TVs. They'll file an insurance claim. They'll try to look for footage, but there won't be any because the power was off during that time. And they won't think anything about it. They'll just build it into the cost of goods sold. Every retail establishment has a certain amount of information that's stolen. I'm going to call it hourly in some instances for the larger stores, daily, weekly, monthly. Even the largest and most sophisticated jewelry stores know that security breaches happen and they lose equipment all the time. So that's a deep breath in how I would steal something from Walmart. I'd masquerade with somebody else's ID, and I would find a thoughtful way to get something out of the store and make it seem like it was okay for me to take it out of the store. So let's compare that now to some of the issues that people are facing. We're now getting out of the kindergarten side, and we're working a little bit closer toward that PhD side. Anybody who knows anything at all about security knows that the biggest hackers are not the ones that are anonymous in the outside world trying to thoughtfully break in and steal stuff. I know during the last election we heard all about the Russians trying to break into Hillary Clinton's email. The truth is that the United States government and the companies within the United States are some of the biggest hackers in the known world. And I know it's easy to attempt to point the finger at the Russians for being the bad guys in this instance. But the truth is, you have employees, maybe they haven't worked there in 2 years, who still have usernames and passwords on your network, who have access to information. They have items in their sent email items. They've still got access to files and folders on your network. And if they have access to them, they have the ability to take information and get it to places you'd rather not see it. Remember my earlier slide of somebody knocking everything over in the store? People who don't work there have the ability to do that in many of your companies, just like the people who still work there, because they still have usernames and passwords that have some authority to them. I would say the second biggest issue that we struggle with for people is they don't have any sort of two-factor authentication. So what does that mean? Let's say I work at a Walmart and I have a badge and I'm trying to clock in at work. Two-factor authentication means I can't just use the badge that I'm wearing, but I'm also going to have to use, say, my fingerprint or a retina scan or a code that was assigned to me that showed up on my phone once a day. There's another thing beside a static username and password that I have to use to get in. We struggle with this all the time. Many of our customers don't have global two-factor authentication. We give a user, A. Smith, a password of happy123, and her password, happy123, happens to be the same password that 2 or 3 other people in the building have. And if Sally happens to leave or if somebody else happens to leave, somebody can probably figure out what Sally's password was. If that was also tied, say, to a 6-digit key that showed up on her key ring every morning, or a specific code that she would get sent to her cell phone via text message every day, now it doesn't matter if somebody has her A. Smith happy123, they're still missing a critical piece of information. So we see that all the time. When you don't have two-factor authentication, you set yourself up to fail. There's no real logging that's done. What I mean by logging is had a normal Walmart security smart man been around, he would have perhaps noticed that that badge was stolen or missing, or even worse, he would have perhaps noticed that so on and so forth is logging in when their schedule doesn't even have them working that day. That should have been a flag that somebody should have noticed. Another thing that should have happened is if the badge was set down on the ground and appeared motionless for, say, 5 or 10 minutes, that too should have been a flag. You shouldn't have a vest and a badge sitting motionless in an area that's not a break area for 5 or 10 minutes. Had that badge also been associated with walking out the front door in the middle of the day while simultaneously getting readings that there's 10 TVs with that person going out the door in the middle of the day, that's a piece of information that I would have liked to have logged. It may not have been anything at all, but I would have liked to have known that something like that happened. The next thing, I'm calling it a false positive. False positive means just because you had an event happen that could have meant you lose 10 TVs, there was no mechanism for you to say, well, I don't know if that's really 10 TVs being stolen, or if some person isn't really buying 10 TVs because they got a party or they have gifts they're trying to give to somebody. They're setting up for March Madness at their office. We don't know what that is. But we don't have any mechanisms in place when we start logging everybody's behavior to see if they're doing something that's normal for their job or not normal for their job. Well, let's say you're sick at Walmart and you're about to throw up and you happen to be an employee there and you don't want to get it all over your vest. Maybe it would make sense for you to take your vest off and just drop it on the ground and run to the bathroom so you can take care of yourself. So there'd be that would be a normal behavior in that instance. But that wouldn't be the standard behavior. There's no mechanism for logging that. So we have a battery of recommendations we recommend for people. Intrusion detection and intrusion prevention is a fancy way of saying there needs to be a mechanism that's logging what everybody is doing all the time. Let's call it a second story to the building that no one knows about. And let's say the second story is made out of glass, and there's people up there who don't take vacations and holidays, and they're constantly watching all the people who work there and coming up with statistics on people's behavior. So if you're a finance officer at a company and it's normal for you to log in at 8 a.m. at work, there should be some sort of mechanism that says, why did you log in at work at 8 a.m. and log in from home with your laptop at 8 a.m.? Or why did you log in 2 locations at 8 a.m. at the same time? That's an event. Now, is that a justification for immediately doing something? No, but you'd want to log that. And you might need to create a rule that says these executives can only log in at one device at one time because they have access to too much information. Pretty simple stuff. The next thing we don't see much of is a thoughtful backup strategy. Just like I told you, Walmart has a plan B for power. You know, they might have an uninterruptible power supply in their server room. They might have a generator out back. If somebody's smart enough to get a user badge and walk into the building and sit down at a computer and log in, the odds are they're smart enough to figure out what a power cord in the server room looks like and unplug things from the wall. Now, granted, the UPS might be there, but if they're smart enough to figure out what your assets are, they're probably smart enough to know how to disable a UPS, and certainly they're smart enough to know to carry a small hand drill in their pocket and step through a fence or reach through a fence and drain out a diesel fuel tank a day or two before they're attempting to do this hack. So when the diesel generator is asked to come on in a backup role to keep everything running, it never starts. So people don't have strategies for addressing that. In addition, their backup methods don't include some sort of mechanism for moving their data to some other location. Any instance of military conflict, anybody who studies military conflict knows that there's always a mechanism to make sure that the leadership has the ability to have an immediate departure from the combat zone. Maybe it's a helicopter fly-in Hanoi at the end of the Vietnam War to evacuate key personnel, but not all personnel. Having a cloud-based backup solution so that if something is destroyed or is breached, you have the ability to come back to life even if your facility's been destroyed. I had some conversations with people about this when Charlotte was experiencing the riots, and there was a main hotel in downtown Charlotte. What is the Adams Mark? I forgot what it's called now. They ended up having to board that up. Somebody broke in and got through to that. Well, if they broke the glass and got in, I don't know if it was reported to the public or not, but they could have certainly gone into the restaurant and emptied out the cash registers while they were at it. Did they? I don't know. It's a possibility. Next thing we have is an increase in the number of attack vectors. Not too many years ago, the only place that you could do anything positive or negative for your job using technology meant sitting at your desktop computer. Now, many employees, if not most employees, have at least one mobile device, and in a lot of instances, especially those of us in IT, we're logging in from home on a third device or a fourth device. A lot of executives have iPads just to keep in touch with things that are coming and going. And we call each of those devices that has the ability to have a username and password sent to it as part of the attack vector. It's the equivalent of a football player losing his helmet or a hockey player losing perhaps some of the padding in his legs. As time passes, the more devices you have per person, the more different ways we have to attack and do damage to a customer. So in an ideal world, there's a room like this that's invisible, or a room like this that's invisible to all of our customers and all of the people who are trying to run their business, that's monitoring everything inside of your building. Your IT staff does not have the bandwidth to do this because they're too busy helping users buy cell phones and connect to the network and helping them with printing issues and making sure people have access to the files they need in a timely manner and upgrades that never seem to end. But we still have to get back to that basic business. If our business is to sell TVs and not get stolen, Walmarts of the world do need a second-story building to track and log and monitor all those additional new attack vectors that are out there for people. So I can kind of pause right here. I'm about 26 minutes in, and I wanted to, like I said, 15 to 30 minutes. I have some stuff up there on who we are and what we do. Obviously, we're a company that designs and installs this. We put in the appliances that are doing all the monitoring for you 24/7 in real time. We're helping connect the false positives for you and all that go with that. But even if you forget who we are, there's some things on there that you guys need to make sure you do is base principle stuff no matter what going forward. You should now going forward be doing two-factor authentication for everybody all the time. The risks are just too high. There was a great story about how Sony got hacked, and they lost 4 full-length motion pictures out through the firewall from an employee's username and password who had quit something like a year earlier. Now, those videos that they sent out through the firewall amounted to 80 terabytes of data. So that would be like Bill Clinton joining in on this phone call and nobody not saying anything. If you had 80 terabytes of data come out through your firewall, you would probably find it to be an appropriate thing to get a notification that said, oh, by the way, we just took 4 videos and mailed them to this server on the other side of the moon. Somebody would have wanted to know that, but Sony didn't have any third-party people looking at that pattern to say, hey, we've never seen this before. You guys might want to look at that. Two-factor authentication would have made it so those credentials would not have worked for that former employee. There are too many instances when IT people apologize to their users saying we have to do upgrades, we have to do a patch, we have to turn this kind of stuff off. And this is really adding to the problems everybody's facing. You guys have to get out of the business of apologizing when you try to secure things. There's really not a need to say sorry about this. It should be more of a matter of factual. We are protecting us. We are protecting you. As such, today at 5 p.m., we are going to be upgrading whatever it is, fill in the blank, to make all of our systems safer. That should be your message as opposed to, I am so sorry we have to do this to you people, but we're going to have to change the way you do business because otherwise you're going to get hacked. And, of course, some old-timer in your organization is going to fight it and saying, well, I'm not going to do it or whatever. There's no reason to apologize. Security is more important than that. The next recommendation we have is you should have all your devices monitored, and you need to have them monitored by something that doesn't take time off from work. It's very tempting to say, well, what's it going to cost me, and put a dollar on that. The truth is it's a certain number of dollars per month because you're going to need to get a device count and a device type and figure out what it's going to cost to monitor all those things all the time so that if stuff is coming and going, it's not scary for you. You don't have to say, I don't know what's going on with those devices anymore. They just work. You need to have somebody who's got 365, 24/7, real live human being eyes staring on it. And that's a model, that's a principle of scale. The only way you can do that is if you're doing thousands of devices at a time. And you need to subscribe to a service that will do that for you. This one is kind of people do this already for the most part. They secure their entry and they secure their exit points. But those two need to have two-factor authentication. Our firewall as a company, you can't just use a username and password to connect to our Cisco ASA. You also have to have a second password, and that second password changes all the time. My password might change only once every 90 days or 180 days, but the one to get into my firewall is changing every day. And I have to have another app running on my cell phone just to log into the firewall. The last one is what the lawyers need to see in case somebody does get hacked. If I try to impersonate a police officer today, that's a crime, and I can be in prison for that. If I take my username and password to the network and I sell it to somebody who doesn't work there, or if I sell it to some third party, I didn't commit a crime unless you told them in advance that they can't do that kind of stuff. If I leave my workstation logged in when I go home for the evening, I haven't done anything wrong unless you told me not to do that. If I didn't change my password, when they say you need to change your password and you say not now, if they hit not now and they just keep hitting not now on and on, they didn't break the rules if you didn't tell them that. And, of course, the last one is the who else knows your password rule. It should not be the case that somebody else in the company knows your password. And the only way you can enforce something like that is if you tell them when you hire them, or you create a written security policy that says you shall not give anybody your password. In the event you have to give somebody your password, please log who you gave it to and change it within 24 hours. You need to have a written policy to ensure stuff like this doesn't happen. And it needs to be as thorough as possible. I know people who are in professional sports complain that they're held accountable for mistakes. Why can't referees be held accountable for mistakes? Same should be said of IT. If the IT people are responsible for making changes, they should be saying, if I've got a password for a user, part of my job description is I shall right-click their username inside of Active Directory and say, reset password upon next logon, and make sure that that user automatically changes the password and hold them accountable to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my conversation that I wanted to have with you. I'm leaving it in the space where you guys can hit me with questions. We got Mike Wilson on the phone who can answer questions about cloud-based security if anybody has any cloud questions. And I'll handle the on-prem questions as best as I can. So I'm leaving the floor open. I guess, Jessica, is there a button you need to hit to allow people to ask questions? She says not. So ask away, boys and girls. Well, it's kind of normal. It is overwhelming. I hope you can find something there's a video Jessica and I had created that shows this, so we can send you a link to the video. It's a YouTube video as well as being on our website, and you can share that with other people in your organization. Is anybody excited about trying to break into Walmart? One laugh. That's all I got out of that one.
No, I'm excited about getting a couple free TVs, though. Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff, you ruined the Christmas surprise for the Christmas party.
I got a question for you. You talked about having having security in place that's not just one person that occasionally looks at some logs, but it's a service that always has eyes on it, always has algorithms running. Give us an idea of what's available. What does that mean? What does it look like?
So as a business person, you're looking at a small investment up front to have an appliance placed on your network, and everything in your network that you want monitored talks to the appliance all the time. And the appliance is reading that flow of information. It's got logs about who logged in and who hit file print and who double-clicked the accounting program and who rebooted their computer and all that goes with that. But at the same time, that little appliance is sending a copy of all those logs to a mothership. And the mothership's just a big data center on the other side of the world. And that mothership is running fancy analytics to look for patterns. Is this behavior a normal behavior, or is this an anomaly? And if it's an anomaly, something that's never happened before, like, say, somebody rebooted their computer 8 times in a day, whatever the number is we create, there's a messaging sent back to the customer directly that says, hey, we've got an anomaly that we've never seen before, and this is what it is. And then they can hand that off to have somebody like us, or they can look at it themselves to see if they want to do something about it. In Sony's case, they wouldn't have gotten an email real quick saying, there's one computer that's attempting to upload 80 terabytes of data to this other location, and it's a user that doesn't work here anymore. Anybody want to look into that? It would look something like that. Well, guys, with that, let us close this out. It is 2:36, so we took 35 minutes, which is 5 longer than I thought. I hope it was a good use of your time. We will have more of these events, hopefully with catchier titles as well. And I hope the next time you see a Walmart and you see a truck parked out back, you think to yourself, wow, that truck driver's got a badge I wish I could get my hands on.